Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm Cheryl Johnson Watts, the project director for the PACSP grant. And today we are going to get into detail about the application section that has to do with the budget. This is the key of everything that happens in the grant. You will be determining what you will do for your school, and then you'll also be determining what you will submit reimbursement for. And so the key to unlocking an entire 1.5 million is based on the budget that you design. Who's eligible for the PACSP grant? Brick and mortar charter schools only. The Pennsylvania Coalition of Public Charter Schools supports brick and mortar and cyber charter schools. The federal government, which oversees this grant and has made this grant possible through legislation under the Clinton administration from that time till now, has consistently had it as brick and mortar charter schools only. So this grant is for brick and mortar charter schools. The other requirements include an approved charter from a Pennsylvania authorizer. PACSP cannot fund schools that are in the charter application process. Now, you do not have to be a member of PCPCS. However, we would love for you to join. You will receive a copy of this PowerPoint, and when you click on the link, it will clarify for you the federal ESSA definitions of a charter school. That also determines your eligibility. And we have developed an eligibility guide to help prospective applicants. And that is available on the PACSP grant page as well as the PCPCS website. Use of funds. It's very important to understand that subgrantees are funded on a reimbursable basis. You're able to submit allowable and approved expenses to the PACSP team monthly. Specific documentation is necessary for reimbursement of cost. We've developed an allowable cost guide to help prospective applicants. This guide is posted to the website. Well, we're in year 5, and the applications are available at the How to Apply page on the grant website. And the application window opened on June 2nd and closes on Monday, July 14th at 11:59 p.m. The applications must be submitted via the online portal. Please identify a school point person that will sign up, create an account and profile. Also, download, complete, and upload the letter of intent, and complete application part 1 and 2 by following the prompts within the application portal. And please note that we are having everything submitted via PDFs except for the budget, and we'll talk about that momentarily. But when you do upload those PDFs, if you have hyperlinks to further clarify or illustrate what you have referenced in your application, please be sure that the links are active, that you have created the PDF in such a way that the links are active. The components of the application is the 2025 PACSP grant request for application document itself, the blank letter of intent, the school zone map, and of course you will be completing the letter of intent, the school zone map, an enrollment summary, the allowable cost guide, and the blank school project budget sheet, spreadsheet, which you will complete. and then a sample school project budget spreadsheet so that you become familiar with what the information is that we want to see and how it is conveyed. And we're going to walk through that today. Also, your application narrative rubric, your project specific narrative rubric, and your competitive preference priority plan rubric. These rubrics are essential for your understanding of what peer reviewers will look for and how they will score you during the application review process. So, we encourage you to identify as you apply which standard you are responding to, which standard are you sharing with us and showing us how you uphold it or how you plan to uphold it. Additionally, it is really important that when you provide the information, you follow the guidelines, which are written out in the RFA about the number of pages and the size of the font. All of these things help the peer reviewer experience, and you want to make sure that you have their complete focus and attention. And then also the track record rubric. The track record rubric only applies to expanding and replicating schools. You must be in operation for 3 years or more in order to have a track record. Now, when you go to the RFA booklet, there is a table of contents, and pages 19 through 26 focus on budget instructions. Things to keep in mind. All pages must be standard letter size, 8.5 by 11. All narrative responses should use 11-point font in Calibri or Times New Roman. Use double line spacing, 1-inch margins. The tables may be in 11-point font. Number all your pages. That's very important for people to, they might print out your application and you want them to be able to follow accordingly. There are page limits. Executive summary is 1 page double spaced. Application narrative, 30 pages double spaced. Project specific narrative, 2 pages double spaced. The competitive preference priority plan, 2 pages double spaced. And the track record, which once again is simply for expansions and replications only, that is 10 pages double spaced. Your budget narrative will be 3 pages double spaced. Now, keep in mind that 3 pages double spaced is for you to convey what you plan to do and what it will cost for you to do that. Now, the actual specifics of those costs go into your budget spreadsheet. So you want to convey that in year one, we're anticipating purchasing a curriculum. And then in your budget spreadsheet, you identify the curriculum and the purchase price. So the budget narrative is more conversational about what you plan to do and how these funds will further your school towards its goals. Then your school project budget spreadsheet will clearly identify the items that you discussed in your budget narrative and how they play out over the 3 years of you executing on your plans. Completed applications will include a completed letter of intent. The following documents must be completed and submitted via the online portal by Monday, July 14, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. And that is the cover sheet and enrollment information, authorizer notification, executive summary, application narrative, project specific narrative, and required attachments, as well as the competitive preference priority plan. The budget narrative and school project budget template is what we will discuss today. And there are other required attachments. The 2025 application budget template. Each applicant may utilize up to 18 months of grant award for planning activities. The actual turning point going from implementation and going from planning to implementation is when students are actually in the seats. So if you are a new school that is starting, when your students are actually in the classroom is when you are in your implementation phase. So 18 months of planning. If you're an expansion school, it's when that new grade begins. If you're a replicating school, it's when the replicated school opens. And also keep in mind, if you're an expansion school by way of increasing your enrollment by more than 20%, then your implementation begins when those enrolled students are in their seats. Each year's budget must not exceed the award totals shown in the table below. 1.1 million in year 1, 200,000 in year 2, 200,000 in year 3, and that will get you to a total of 1.5 million. And please keep in mind, these are based on conditions which are outlined in the RFA. Now, there are a number of different spreadsheets that are available. However, for this grant application process, we are relying entirely on Excel. Also, keep in mind that the Excel spreadsheet has a macro embedded into it. So we want to make sure that you are not PDFing the spreadsheet that you're handing in. You are literally uploading an Excel spreadsheet. After you download the Excel spreadsheet, enable macros if your computer prompts you to do so. Many computers automatically speak in terms of development, speak directly to the Excel spreadsheet and will immediately activate the macros. But there are computers still at this time that, depending on what year they were designed, you would need to implement the macro. There would be 3 tabs. Tab 1 and tab 3 are reference tools. And we're going to literally walk through these tabs in a moment. Tab 1 has the definitions and it outlines the 12 expenditure categories and identifies the specific PA general ledger codes that should be attributed to each allowable expense. Keep in mind, we use the Pennsylvania Department of Education Chart of Account codes. So this should be something that your school is already familiar with if they have submitted any budgets to the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And if you're a new school, this is a wonderful way to have something that is easily translatable to what the Pennsylvania Department of Education will expect. Then tab 2 is the detailed budget worksheet, which you will fill in. And you will see that Everything else complies with what you fill in due to the macros. Uh, the You must itemize your budgeted costs by fiscal year within each grant year, and you may not utilize all items or line items, and that's okay. So you may decide, I'm going to focus on 5 key areas, and it's going to be a certain number of items, and the amount that each of those items equal would be such that you only need 10 lines to do this budget, and that's fine. All we want is for you to communicate in dollars and cents how you are going to actualize what you've placed in your budget narrative. The summation formulas are already populated into the template for you, as well as the insert row button, and we'll go over that as well. Now, do not add rows to the last 3 categories, which are recruitment, facility cost, and school bus. If you accidentally insert a row that was not needed, highlight the row and delete the entire row. And then tab 3 summarizes everything. Keep in mind, fields are locked on tab 3, and they will automatically be populated as you complete tab 2. And more guidance on completing the worksheet as well as the budget categories can be found on pages 24 to 28. The budget narrative is so important. Do not exceed 3 pages, double spaced. It's to assist the grant reviewers in understanding how your budget supports your grant application. There should be a clear connection between the objectives identified in your grant application and the grant request. Clearly explain that all expenditures are allowable, reasonable, and allocable, and are adequate to support the activities of the project and directly connect to the goals and objectives in the proposal narrative. It is important that the budget and narrative demonstrate how the school will maintain financial sustainability after the end of the subgrant period. Something that you will see re-emphasized in the allowable cost guide is everything is related to start up. These are not expenses for the regular course of running the school. These are expenses that will be, these are dollars that will be infused into the school to secure the foundation of things getting started. The justification of how and or why a line item in the budget summary helps to meet the program deliverables. So you will see that there is a section where you can provide a comment. That is where you put the strength of your planning. For example, you may be doing a program related to the reading proficiency for your students, and you're going to purchase a certain curriculum. And in addition to that, you're also going to purchase a certain program that helps students learn interactively in addition to the curriculum. To demonstrate the strength of your planning, explain each purchase in the comments so people understand that there is no redundancy, but it's actually supplementing and supporting the work. And you must discuss all years of funding that align to the CSP grant budget. So also keep that in mind, that you want to outline how you plan to do this over time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to bring up a sample budget so that you can see how that works. Now, once we have looked at the sample budget, then I will also show you a blank budget so that you will be able to see what happens when you input information. So here is a sample budget for a school that received the grant in 2024, and it runs for the 3 years through 2027. As you can see here, if you look at the bottom, here is the definition page. So that's tab 1 that we discussed. Now, are these the only things that you will submit for? Not necessarily. There may be something that is very unique that has a code that's not referenced here, but that's where you will need to help the reviewer understand why you think that that particular item is necessary. What you see here are items that do come up frequently in the budget plan. And so these definitions are here to help guide you in your conversation. So basically, these definitions are not here to tell you what you will need. These definitions are here to help you articulate what you've expressed in your budget narrative. So if you scroll through, there's a number of different things related to staff, a number of different things related to professional development. And keep in mind, the allowable cost guide will give you guidance as to when and how some of these expenses are part of the overall plan. Not everything is allowable every year. So look very closely at the allowable cost guide. Okay. Next, what I'd like to take you to is tab 3, which is the summary budget worksheet. This has everything totaled up by certain categories that are in the overall budget. And what you will see is the ability to look at it year by year. So grant year 1, grant year 2, grant year 3, and then the grand total. Now, when you go to the detailed budget worksheet, which is the one that you will actually be filling in, you will see that grant year 1, grant year 2, and grant year 3 is divided. The reason this is done is because the grant is a federal grant, and the fiscal year for a federal grant is from October 1 through September 30th. It's very important that we acknowledge that, because although a school fiscal year is July 1 through June 30th, the grant fiscal year, that we will be determining what your available funds are is entirely separate. So here is the grant year one, and here this breakout acknowledges the July 1 through June 30th nature of a school's fiscal year. So, what you're able to do is input the dollar amounts related to what you're going to do from October to June 30th, and then what you're going to do from July 1 to September 30th. One of the things that I enjoy doing is mapping things out with a timeline. And I think that that will help you as well as you look at what would go in this section versus what would go in this section. So let's talk a little bit about the strength of your planning. This is the place to demonstrate that. What are your school expense assumptions? So, as you can see here, this applicant is not only looking at science curriculum, they already have in mind the type, the actual provider that they're going to be working with. Now, does this mean that you cannot work with someone other than what you had mentioned in this budget explanation? It does not. But what it does do is it helps us to understand the level of detail that you've gone to make sure that your budget is going to work for you. So keep that in mind. You could generically say, well, I'm going to do a science curriculum and it's going to cost this much money. But when you have clarified that it's this particular curriculum with this attached cost, it communicates the level and the extent of research that you've done in terms of deciding on your budget. That is something that is quite impressive. And it's something to keep in mind. Now, if you do not know the specifics of particular items and you have a strong rationale for why at the time of application you do not have that level of detail, it's very important to mention that in your school expense assumptions. There could be something where you are saying, well, I'm going to have this curriculum, but I'm only going to plan on having 30 students utilizing it. Our goal overall in expansion is that we'll have 100 students using it. But for now, we want to go with 30. These are the types of details that can be very helpful. In addition to that, if that was a case in point for you, then you want to show when you might have an additional 30 and literally identify that. And the reason I say that is because um, this grant does not support subscription purchases where every month there is a fee for something. What you can do is make an acquisition and explain that it's for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. However, you really want to be clear about that. And this is why we have arranged for individual info sessions from now through July so that you have an opportunity to ask questions about the best way to present the different things that you feel are going to support your goals but you're not quite sure how to communicate it in such a way that demonstrates the strength of your budget. So, as you can see, there are different types of cost that are illustrated here. Uh, how about this? Initial legal fees for building and charter negotiations, bylaws, policies, etc. Legal fees estimated at $3.25 an hour for 125 hours. You want to be clear about how you are executing on your goal and what expenditures that you see identified in the allowable cost guide will be worked out throughout the time of your budget. Here's another one. Independent CPA firm, first year audit fees split into 2 installments. There are a number of items that are essential to you having a firm financial foundation. And we have outlined those in the allowable cost guide to alert you to how those costs can be reimbursed by the grant. Now, something a little more straightforward, 400 Chromebooks. Okay, that's very clear. How much per book? An Apple MacBook, a smart board, LED display. All of these expenses are outlined. Now, I do want to show you how to input, but I do want to allow for questions at this time because I think it's very important for you to ask them while they're fresh in your mind as we're looking at this sample budget. If you don't mind, please do a hand raise if you're able to, so that we know that you have a question. And it's okay if you don't have questions. We are going to be scheduling or giving you a link so that you can schedule a one-on-one information session. All right, I don't see any hands raised. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to go to a blank budget worksheet so that you have an opportunity to see what happens when you begin to input. Okay, bear with me. taking a minute to download open. Okay, I'm going to share screen. Okay, as you can see, tab 1 has the definitions. Tab 3 has the summary. And we know it's the summary section because it just says grant year 1, grant year 2, grant year 3. And the detailed budget worksheet, which you will complete, is, excuse me, here, where you will add your information. So let's go to supplies, and you're going to have um, 5 cartons of 5 Chromebooks at $200 each. For sign in at visitor center. I'm trying to make up things that are very likely not to be in your presentation. Although I think it's a wonderful thing to have a visitor center. I have seen that at certain schools, and I think it's wonderful. But I'm just trying to find something that would be um, a little bit more for the sake of illustration. And you want to have that purchased uh, before the school year, and so that you can get things underway in August. So you're going to purchase it in the month of September, and so that's going to be here. So that's $1,000. Now you're also planning to have the let's say the check-in system that will allow for you to have security clearance done. So you are going to spend maybe $5,000. Now, we're just coming up with this number. This is not built on anything other than conjecture. But you're going to have $5,000 that you're going to spend in July for the security system for the background checks. So when people walk in, they can hand their driver's license over or some other state issued ID, government issue ID, and be able to have clearance right there on the spot. So the security system for building, visitor building access. Okay, so this is something that happens in year one, and I would like for you to see what happens when I've entered that. Here at the top, you see that there's $6,000 spent in grant year one. However, over here, you see that it's 5,000 in July, but 1,000 in the period before that, because that during the month of June, while the best prices were in place, you made your purchase of um, the Chromebooks. However, you've been in negotiations, RFPs related to the different types of security equipment that you're going to be using, and you finalized your decision in July and you made payment then. So this budget summary shows it up as all being grant year one. And then your grand total is here. So let's see what else might happen in grant year two. In grant year two, we go back to let's go to professional development. In grant year two, you have a board that is going to receive professional development on fundraising. So the person that's going to come in and speak, they require a speaker honorarium as well as material cost. And so you could do one of two things. If that speaker has everything covered in their fee, then you would put that here. But if that speaker has, let's say that's one speaker that comes in June, let's say there's a different speaker that comes in July and they charge 2,000, but the materials that they are providing you must purchase separately, and so that's $500 for the workbooks. So here you would say workbook related to fundraising professional development. And here you would say fundraising professional development speaker compensation for June, fundraising PD speaker compensation for July. Now, this is bare bones. If you are able to say that you are going to have national fundraising specialist Joe Smith speaking, and it's $2,000 or $2,500. Um, these are types of things that show the strength of your planning. Yeah, you could say fundraising, professional development, speaker compensation for June would be 2,500. That's fine, but if you already know that you're going to be securing someone that has done phenomenal work, mention that, because for someone reviewing this, they can see the level of planning that you have put into your budget. Um, so I'm going to stop here and see if there are any other questions related to inputting the information. Okay. Well, basically, we wanted to make sure that we took time out to speak specifically about the budget section of the application. It's the lifeblood of the grant. There are so many wonderful things happening at so many wonderful schools. But ultimately, for the grant to be a successful grant, you must be able to document the expenditures. You must be able to utilize expenses that are allowable, allocable, and reasonable. And in order to do that, your planning will be your guide. So I like to speak of a certain flow. You have the general project specific narrative. You have the application narrative that speaks to who you are as a school, what you represent, why you exist. You have your project specific narrative. This is what we plan to do. This school that we've told you about in the application narrative is going to do the following. And that's what this project specific narrative is telling you. And then you're sharing with the reviewer. This is how we're going to pay for it. And what you want to do is highlight for that reviewer that the strength of your goals is that you have a plan in place. And the strength of your plan is that you know how to cost it out. And when you're costing it out, you're able to indicate why it's an allowable cost. If it seems like it's a little bit contrary to common belief, explain it. But if it is something that's very easy to explain, also consider if you can provide the detail as to how far you've researched what it is that you're going to provide. Um, if you're going to do a 75-inch LED screen, tell us why. Tell us what that screen will allow you to do. Is it just going to say, welcome, welcome? Or is it going to have interactive training sessions for your students where everyone can sit in a room and begin to talk about different subjects that are on the screen and actually have a touch screen? Like, these are the things that give clarity and a sense of purpose to what it is that you plan on spending the funds on. So we're about to hit our limit on time, but I just want to make sure that there aren't any questions at all because I have not seen any hands raised. And it's okay because you can always sign up. Yes, Sharon.
Yes. So two things actually. First, I just really want to thank you for this session. I can't remember a time when we've done a grant where we have been provided so much guidance, and that is really, really appreciated. So I really want to thank you for going through that with us, and that we don't have many questions on the budget. I do have one question, if it's allowed, is that correlation of the youth opportunity zones with the grant and how that works, if you don't mind.
Sure. So it's the Keystone Opportunity Zone here in Pennsylvania, but in general, this charter school program grant through the federal government, there's an area known as an Opportunity Zone, which you can find through the HUD map and also Housing and Urban Development map. Now, when it comes to the criteria related to being in or having a significant number of students that are from that opportunity zone, well, the address is pretty clear cut if you're actually in an opportunity zone. And then the other aspect is if you have something in place or will be putting something in place to increase the number of students that will be coming from an opportunity zone. So for some, that has been transportation. And that's one of the reasons why we have a section for transportation startup costs, because sometimes it is as simple as that. For others, it is community engagement and outreach. And that's why there's also a section there where, it might not be a concern for transportation. It may be a concern of people knowing your school exists and having some type of activity that will bring people into your school for tours. And then you have an opportunity to find out what are the concerns for those students that you might better serve them. So, does that help answer the question?
Yeah. That's perfect. I appreciate it. And again, I can't thank you enough for this session today and really going through the details. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. And we just want to say to all of you as we wrap up, thank you. When someone makes a commitment to the future of our country by making sure that children are prepared to function in the world as adults, that is never to be taken lightly. That is a great, great cause that you've taken on. And we are so proud of you, and we so appreciate each and every one of you for the work that we do. That is why the Pennsylvania Coalition of Public Charter Schools exists, to serve you as you serve the community in making sure that they have school choice and education. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And we look forward to seeing you in the individual information sessions as well. Take care.
You too. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.